I was having a pleasant dream when what sounded like hammering woke me. After that, I could barely hear the muffled sound of dirt covering the coffin over my own screams. "I can't sleep," she whispered, crawling into bed with me. I woke up cold, clutching the dress she was buried in. I begin to tuck him into bed, and he tells me, "Daddy, can you check for monsters under my bed?" I look underneath for his amusement, and I see him, another him, under the bed, staring back at me, quivering and whispering, "Daddy, there's somebody on my bed." You get home tired after a long day's work, and ready for a relaxing night alone. You reach for the light switch, but another hand is already there. I can't move, breathe, speak, or hear, and it's so dark all the time. If I knew it would be this lonely, I would have been cremated instead. She went upstairs to check on her sleeping toddler. The window was open, and the bed was empty. I never go to sleep, but I keep waking up. My daughter won't stop crying and screaming in the middle of the night. I visit her grave to ask her to stop, but it doesn't help. After working a hard day, I came home to see my girlfriend cradling our child. I didn't know which was more frightening, seeing my dead girlfriend and stillborn child, or knowing that someone broke into my apartment to place them there. There was a picture in my phone of me sleeping. I live alone. I woke up to hear knocking on glass. At first I thought it came from the window, until I heard it come from the mirror again. The last thing I saw was my alarm clock flashing 12:07 before she pushed her long rotting nails through my chest, her other hand muffling my screams. I sat bolt upright, relieved that it was only a dream, but as I saw my alarm clock read 12:06, I heard my closet door creak open. Growing up with cats and dogs, I got used to the sounds of scratching at my door while I slept. Now that I live alone, it is much more unsettling. In all the times I lived alone in this house, I swear to God, I've closed more doors than I've opened. A girl heard her mom yell her name from downstairs, so she got up and started to head down. As she got to the stairs, her mom pulled her into her room and said, "I heard that too." She asked why I was breathing so heavily. I wasn't. My wife woke me up last night to tell me there's an intruder in our house. She was murdered by an intruder 2 years ago. I awoke to the sound of the baby monitor crackling with a voice comforting my firstborn child. As I adjusted to a new position, my arm brushed against my wife, sleeping next to me. I always thought my cat had staring problems. She always seemed to be fixated on my face, until one day when I realized that she was always looking just behind me. There's nothing like the laughter of a baby, unless it's 1 a.m. and you're home alone. The doctor told the amputee he might experience a phantom limb from time to time. Nobody prepared him for the moments, though, when he felt cold fingers brush across his phantom hand. It sat on my shelf with thoughtless porcelain eyes and the prettiest pink dress I could find. Why did she have to be born still? You wake up. She doesn't. Don't be afraid of monsters. Just look for them. Look to your left, to your right, under your bed, under your dresser, in your closet, but never look up. She hates being seen. The grinning face stared at me from the darkness beyond my bedroom window. I live on the 14th floor. It's been watching me for hours now. Sometimes I catch glimpses of its reflection in the computer screen, but I don't turn around. When I finally grabbed her in the darkness, I swam back to the surface. It never occurred to me how fast ice could freeze over. My grandmother told me that it was a gift to see the angel of death in front of people's houses, to know that he'd be collecting someone there soon. I thought it was a gift too, up until the day I began to see it in front of every house. They delivered the mannequins in bubble wrap. From the main room, I began to hear popping. Carol never wore safety goggles. Now she doesn't need to. "You stupid bastard," I cried as he tied me to the rails. "Don't you know this line has been abandoned for years?" "Of course I know," he said, walking away. "No one comes here at all." My sister says that Mommy killed her. Mommy says I don't have a sister. "You were my mommy the last time we died too," your daughter tells you in a booming singing voice as she adjusts another puzzle piece. The light in her eyes seems to go out another moment later, as she whispers to you, "It's going to be much more painful this time." The longer I wore it, the more it grew on me. She has such pretty skin. Sleep never came easily to me. The night in the cabin of the woods, for the portraits on the walls only portrayed the doomed, the decrepit, and the damned. Sleep had never come easily to me again, for when I woke up, I found no portraits, only windows. The covers are always a safe place in my bed. Everyone's out, and I'm home alone. I slip between the covers, trying not to think bad thoughts. In complete darkness, I whisper to myself, "Is it stupid that I'm afraid?" "Don't worry, friend. They can't get us in here," it whispers back. You're about to sleep, and to put your blanket on. One of your legs is freezing because it's not covered by the blanket. You're afraid of the monster touching your leg. Then you cover it, and put the blanket over your head, until it's covered. Under the blanket you sigh, yet it's already there. Being the first to respond to a fatal car accident is always the most traumatic thing to see as a police officer. But today, when the crushed body of a dead little boy strapped in his car seat opened his eyes and giggled at me, when I tried to pull him out of the wreckage, I immediately knew that today would be my last day on the force. I kiss my wife and daughter goodnight before I go to sleep. When I wake up, I'm in a padded room, and the nurse tells me it was just a dream. Nurse's note: born 7 pounds 10 ounces, 18 inches long, 32 fully formed teeth, silent, always smiling. Day number 312. Internet is still not working. She was wondering why she was casting 2 shadows. After all, there is only a single light bulb. They celebrated the first successful cryogenic freezing. He had no way of telling them that he was still conscious. The only man in the world sat on a chair in a room. He heard a knock at the door. Being buried alive was bad enough. Realizing that I wasn't alone in my own grave was worse. You know how sometimes you hear someone call your name, and there's no one there? I'm the only one who does that. I stumbled upon the old shack in the woods, and found scary family portraits of faceless or beheaded people line the walls. After I slept the night, there were only windows. The pairs of emaciated eyes outnumber the single round in my gun. With pleading tears falling on her doll's hair, I point the barrel at my last surviving daughter. I wonder what it's like to see, to know like those unlike me, by whom comes those whispers of such terrible things. I haven't left the house in years, so I often wonder what happens outside of it. But I can't leave. Who would watch the bodies? After intense effort, I finally got a hold of the newborn in my arms. I walked away cradling him close, obvious to the bloody gutted corpse I left behind. I left the house with him. I was his mother now. My deceased wife visited me in my dreams. She asked if I wanted her to take me with her to the other side. I was tempted, but tearfully refused. I was still needed here. I woke up the next morning. My son didn't. I had this habit of calling my deceased brother's mobile phone, just to hear his voice on the message after a few pointless rings. It helped me with my pain a little, until one day, some voice declared, "It's time to move on, little sister." I dreaded the moment when they would close the casket. Our long marriage ended in death. I would never see his face again. The moment came. The last image would be of his weeping face, as I would forever be laid to rest. The urge to see her was overwhelming. I had no thought except for this one that night. I took the shovel and drove to the graveyard, unable to fight this visceral impulsion. I knew this would be the end for me. The intense feeling of tugging in my stomach, my blurred vision, the surgeon failing to keep composure. I just laid there waiting for the cry that would tell me if I would be alone for this last journey. I was cool when we put the fake eyes on the picture of me for Halloween. It was not so cool when they started following me when I passed it. Since I get free meat from work, I throw a barbecue party at least once a month. I guess that's one of the benefits of working at an abortion clinic. A man lived alone in a large house. It took him years to realize that all the portraits on his walls were actually windows. I scream in horror as I feel your breath. I scream in horror, and I wish for death. Sometimes I feel like a stranger in my own skin. I wonder if she felt the same when she was wearing it. I never thought I would see the light of day again. Boy, was I wrong. It's too bad my victims won't. When they saw me, they froze in their place. I don't know why. I see a lot of things, but I have no eyes. I've heard several stories on the news about people dressed up as clowns, luring kids to the woods and killing them. I thought I was the only one that did that. Don't look now, but he's behind you. Don't look, for your own good. Good God, look behind you, quickly, it's coming. You looked, didn't you? And if you didn't, you are now fighting the urge to look behind you. It would be easy. You just don't want to be tricked by a two-sentence story. I came home to my daughter, and a group of teenagers passed out with bottles of beers on the table. We're gonna eat good tonight, I said to myself. Are we there yet? It asked me. I thought I was alone. As her knife sinks into my chest, I feel an odd sense of déjà vu. As a child, I had an imaginary friend named Dr. Hug and Kiss. But now that I think about it, he wasn't imaginary, nor was he trying to hug me. For as long as I can remember, I hated clowns. My hatred turned to fear when I started seeing one standing outside my bedroom window. I read the obituaries in the newspaper every morning. It's so nice when people recognize my work. For our anniversary, my girlfriend gave me a self-portrait she painted. At first I thought it was a great gift, until I saw it blink. I strained myself to remember what happened last night. I was taken from my family. It's really hard to remember after you've had half your fingers eaten and hanging, soaked in blood, in a demonic man's basement. Honey, I heard from downstairs. I started walking down the stairs when I realized my mom had died 2 months ago in a car crash. Let's see how deep it will go, he crowed as he plunged his blood-crusted blade into my stomach. If only he had taken it out before he hid my body. The little girl walked up the stairs to find her mom cradling her little brother. The mother died giving birth. You should have heard the little girl scream. My sister used to always stare at me, but it's okay now. She doesn't have any eyes. 4 years ago, my house burned to the ground. I never made it out. When I was a kid, I would sometimes talk to my reflection. I stopped when my reflection started talking back. My imaginary friend kept me company while walking home from school alone in my childhood. Now he has a different habit, watching me from my window, and waiting, and staring. My reflection wasn't what I expected. You know the bloodstains won't wash out. The kids bully me at school, but they have no idea what I'm capable of. One day I may murder a family. Another, I may blow up a school. Oops, I said too much. Most of my life, people have teased me for being afraid of spiders. I doubt any of them have woken up in the middle of the night to find thousands of them crawling out of their mouth. Opening up a butcher shop was a great idea. I just hope people don't ask me what kind of meat I sell, or why their kids keep disappearing. While riding my bike, I stopped at a memorial for a cyclist who had been hit by a car. I was shocked when I saw it had a picture of me, and heard the screeching of brakes behind me. Every day, I get a phone call from my ex-girlfriend saying she misses me. I don't know what scares me more, the fact that my phone was never hooked up, or the fact that she's been dead for 6 months. My neighbor keeps telling me my dog howls all night, even though I keep telling him I don't have a dog. I always thought it was strange that it only happens the day after a full moon. I dialed 69 to tell the guy who keeps calling me all night and saying he wants to kill me to leave me alone. My blood ran cold when I heard the phone ringing in my closet. I always thought it was creepy that my cat would bring me dead birds and mice every day, mostly because she died a year ago. My father assured me that vampires don't exist. That didn't make me feel any better, since it was the only explanation I had for why he kept drinking my blood. My teacher told me I could make all my dreams come true if I tried hard enough. She probably regretted it when she realized I always had nightmares about skinning her alive. On his deathbed, my husband confessed that he slept with my sister, to which I replied, "I know, dear. That's why I poisoned you." When I showed up at my girlfriend's house and asked her to marry me, the first thing she did was slam the door with a terrified look on her face. In hindsight, I guess it was a bad idea to do it a day after my funeral. I looked out my window and I could see someone staring at me. When I went out, I could see him staring in my window watching me. I just stood there and stared back. Halloween is my favorite day of the year. It's the only day I can walk down the street covered in blood and carrying a sack of severed body parts without being judged. Don't forget about me. I won't. breathed the coroner to the corpse. "Can you keep a secret?" I told my friend in tears. "I killed my mom last night." "I know," my friend said. "I watched." Last night I dreamt that a hideous creature killed and ate my wife. I awoke the next morning with my wife's mutilated corpse on my floor and the taste of human blood in my mouth. I begin to hear my dog scratching at my door to be let in. Halfway through opening the door, I remember I don't have a dog. Finding a dead body buried in my garden was terrifying. Realizing it was mine was even worse. While walking home from school, a homeless man stopped me and showed me a newspaper article. It had tomorrow's date, and the headline read, "Homeless Man Kills Local Teen." Everyone in my family says I have my mother's eyes. I also have her face, her heart, and her skull. My brother called me last night, begging me to come get him. It was the same thing he used to do when he was alive. I blink and groan in annoyance as I lose another round of our staring contest. His dead, soulless eyes remain unblinking no matter what. After killing my wife, I began to fear I was going insane when I started hearing the sound of her screaming. Now that I see her standing at the foot of my bed with a knife in her hand, I hope I am going insane. I don't understand why all the kids in my neighborhood are afraid to go into the woods at night. I'm the one who has to walk all the way back home alone. I went to a psychologist because I hear voices in my head. He prescribed me pills for it, but the pills didn't stop the voices. But at least now, I can see what the voices belong to. It was a shock for the police force when we discovered the bodies of 100 cult members that had just committed mass suicide. It was even stranger when everyone else on the force suddenly couldn't fight the urge to do the same. While spying on my older sister's sleepover, I saw her playing with the Ouija board and saying, "Jeremy, can you hear us?" I'm Jeremy. "Misty?" my sister said as she came into my room. I wouldn't have been so terrified if my sister didn't die from a car crash 5 years ago. After I went blind, I learned to appreciate the little things in life, like the feel of my wife's hand on my face. I just wish there were only 2 of them. I don't know why, but I've always loved Thursdays. Thursday is the trash day in my neighborhood, and the possibility of someone finally finding the dismembered children in my trash cans always excites me. "Now you'll always be a part of me," he whispered, tying off the final suture. She could not answer. She's much happier with me. She was so lonely while on the ground. I went on a hiking trip last night. I saw a wolf, but I didn't know they could walk on 2 legs. As I look in the mirror, I realize my face looks strange. All I can say is, the man's skin doesn't fit at all. I don't like to go outside, but the puppet strings leave me no choice. A man was happy when he flew. He panicked when he realized he couldn't fly down. People say my daughter has my wife's face. What they don't know is, she actually does. There is no such thing as zombies, but that makes the people that are eating my family so much scarier. Her blood spilled on the floor. It's a pity that its color didn't match the rest of it. After years of failed attempts, I finally got my tramp of a wife to stop sleeping with other men. Those taxidermy lessons really paid off. Every night, I am awoken by the sound of children crying and screaming, coming from the apartment above mine. So I filed a complaint to my landlord. After a moment of chilling silence, he said that the apartment has been empty ever since the former tenants were all murdered over a year ago. After years of searching, I finally found my one true love. I'm so glad I finally found her. It's been getting harder and harder digging up all those graves. My internet history has hundreds of violent fantasy porn sites I've never visited. I've lived alone for 5 years. Whispers emerge, mist of syllables crying out, lies from the gravestones. I tried to cover my ears, but I couldn't move. Today was my birthday. The only guest that showed up was my dead body. I can't find my girlfriend. The last time I saw her, she was in a trash bag. I dropped something on my bedroom floor. When I was looking under my bed, it was handed to me. When I lost my arm, my doctor said I might have phantom pains. They didn't tell me that my phantom arm would try to strangle me. Yesterday, an old man asked me what was the quickest way to get to the Undertaker, so I strangled him. There was a clown statue that really creeped me out, so I called my parents to ask if I could get rid of it. They told me they didn't own a clown statue. "It's coming for you," she whispered. "You don't have much time to live." I wouldn't have been so terrified if I hadn't been born deaf. I'm cooking for my girlfriend tonight, and she asked me what we're having for dinner. I don't have the heart to tell her it's my ex-wife. I woke up screaming in the middle of the night from a terrible nightmare. I am mute. I always enjoy eating liver on Saturday, especially when it comes from people I killed on Friday. I was awoken by the feeling of someone tickling my feet. I live alone, and I was born with no legs. I cut down the tree in my front yard because the branches kept scratching and banging on my window every night. I started to think that the tree was the least of my problems, since the scratching and banging hasn't stopped. Late last night, I heard a knock on my door, and I opened it to find a 10-year-old boy looking at the floor. When he lifted his head and stared at me, I realized it wasn't a child. My girlfriend and I just had an ultrasound for our first baby. I don't know what's more creepy, the fact that our baby has pointed horns, clove hooves, and a tail, or the fact that my girlfriend is a virgin. It took less than a year for the footsteps in the empty hallways and the sound of the screaming in the night to drive me out of my old house. It took less than a week for it to follow me to my new house. Since it's been raining so much lately, I've been staying home most nights. It's a drag for me, but I guess the neighbors are glad that their children have stopped disappearing. When the sound of someone breaking into my house one late night woke me, I sat up and waited. So nice for a meal to make itself available. When the woman came into the gas station, the attendant came out to her car, stopped, then yanked her door open, grabbed her, and pulled her into the building. She was screaming when he did so, but she screamed louder when she looked back at her car and saw the thing that was sliding out of her back seat. On the train ride home, late one night, I got really annoyed at an old woman who kept staring at me. Then I noticed something wiggling out of her ear, and the smell. I sit in a dark corner of the room, waiting for my mom to come back home from work at the mental asylum. I'm still waiting, but I'm beginning to think she's not coming back, because it's been 6 years. The prowler cornered a young woman in an alley, his knife held ready, saying, "Game over, sweetheart." She smiled, revealing sharp teeth, replying, "Maybe for you." Day 108. They still haven't found me yet. I'm beginning to think they forgot to look for me, and the screaming man in the basement. As I looked in the mirror, I saw my dead, beaten-up body with the words 5 days written in a steam above it. 5 days later, I was brutally murdered. I smile at your frantic efforts to lock me out of the house. It's a relief to know you're staying inside with me. With the fingers of one hand, I checked my pulse, while grasping her throat to check the signs of hers. Her heart was beating wildly. It was mine that had stopped. Fear is knowing you are going to die. Horror is knowing you're not going to die soon enough. I've tried mints, breath spray, even using nose plugs to help me ignore my wife's bad breath, but nothing works. No matter what I try, I can still smell her rotting organs. It took a while, but I finally got the girl to stop screaming. Next time, I'll remember to cut off the heads first. It always bothers me when my girlfriend talks in her sleep, mostly because she killed herself a year ago. I hate it when he looks at my reflection in the mirror. It reminds me of the fact that I can never be free. I've spent the past hour in the front of the bathroom mirror looking at my face. I wonder if there's any way to reattach it. I asked my little daughter why she threw her favorite doll away. She held up her arm and said, "She bites." My crazy ex-girlfriend won't stop calling me in the middle of the night. I thought I'd heard the last of her 2 years ago, after she killed herself. I'll tell you the same thing I told the police, the judge, and my psychologist, and the same thing my father told me when I was little. I'll stop eating people when God stops making them taste so good.